Once upon a time, a witcher is hired as a translator by a love-stricken duke to convince a mermaid to sacrifice her fins and become the duke's bride. Alas, their physical and linguistic differences are seemingly too great for the witcher to bridge in the melodic tongue of the merfolk. However, on those very shores he hears an even more enchanting song, from the voice of a beautiful, youthful, blonde bardess. One look into her deep cornflower blue eye, for the other one was covered up by an emo girl haircut, was enough to cause the normally cold and emotionless witcher to fall head over heels for the troubadour. In the end, love prevails, as they unite the duke and his now transformed human bride, averting war between the mer people and the surface dwellers. That night, the witcher and the bardess consummate their love, and Little Eye is gifted a priceless pearl, of which she never parts from. Their bond is so powerful that not even death could sever it. It's a touching and heartwarming story with a classic fairy tale ending that's also embellished fiction. Like, obviously it's all fiction in our world, but in universe, this version of A Little Sacrifice is penned by none other than Little Eye's mentor, Dandelion. He wanted to create a more satisfying and crowd-pleasing tale out of the complex, ugly, and jagged reality that is life on the continent. Of course, since this is the Witcher universe, the real romance between Aglaval and Shianaz is purely transactional. The Duke is a bellicose fuckboy who barely shrouds his base lust in the language of courtly love, while the mermaid has her mind more focused on finding a healthy male to provide her with a, bountiful spawn. Both are equally hard-headed and myopic, and poor put-upon Geralt, who, tasked with translating the Duke's words into song, is a bit tone-deaf.
Shianaz, don't you understand? He cannot survive in the water. I don't accept stupid excuses. I like him too, and want to have his fry. But how can I, if he doesn't want to be a spawner? Where should I deposit my eggs, huh? In his cap?
Sidebar, if you haven't listened to the Witcher books on audio, you owe it to yourself to at least check out Peter Kinney's rendition of A Little Sacrifice. It is one of the most deliriously funny and, as we'll see later, heart-wrenching performances in the whole series. As for Geralt and the Bardess, the true story of their romance isn't exactly as Dandelion described either. Their courtship is awkward, and ultimately the Witcher is unable to reciprocate Little Eye's love, leaving her with the painful, unfulfilled longing when they part their separate ways at the end. It's a very realistic portrayal of a one-sided relationship, too emotionally complex and unsatisfying to spin into a proper fairy tale. But, as Dandelion says, ballads aren't meant to be believed, but to move their audience. That quote could just be the logline for the entire Witcher series, but I thought about it a lot in particular while watching Sirens of the Deep. In many ways, the movie is itself that very cleaned up, crowd-pleasing version of A Little Sacrifice. Now, it'd be easy to accuse it of dumbing down a contemplative, character-focused short story into a loud, bloody, epic fantasy action anime. And yeah, that was pretty easy. Seriously though, I like it. It's easily the best thing Netflix has ever produced for The Witcher. Yeah, not a high bar to clear, and as ever, the liberal changes made to the source material will not please the hardcore fans. But Sirens of the Deep and A Little Sacrifice are so vastly different in tone, plot, and even in the very storytelling medium that it was easier for me to judge the movie as its own thing. And as a rated R Little Mermaid, it genuinely whips ass. The core of the story is rock solid, and Studio Mir's animation is of course beautifully rendered and moves phenomenally. They find so many cool and imaginative uses of the Witcher signs, and this is probably the most book-accurate representation of Geralt's balletic fighting style in any medium. And it's great to see, here, Doug Cockle back in the saddle as Geralt. Even the weird off-kilter moments, I'm talking about the random-ass musical numbers, are the kind of big swings I love to see in my genre fiction, even if they don't completely work. Though as much as Sirens of the Deep diverges from the short story, as an adaptation, far from disrespecting the canon, it forms a fascinating dialogue with the original text. And a mini rant here, I am sick of the fandom, not just for The Witcher mind you, taking every single adaptational change as some sort of personal slight against the author. Like, no, Mike Ostrowski, Ray Benjamin, and Studio Mir don't think that they're better than Andrzej Sapkowski just because their mermaids don't have breasts. Though, to be clear, I am Team Mermaid Titties. They're storytellers just as much as Sapko is, and they reconstruct A Little Sacrifice to explore new narrative and thematic angles, while still keeping the spirit of the book. Much in the same way Sapkowski remixed Hans Christian Andersen, or how in the story Little Eye does her own rendition of Dandelion Yaskir's song. You don't have to like or agree with her creative liberties, but at least try to approach it with more of an open mind. So, with that in mind, how does Sirens of the Deep stack up to A Little Sacrifice? Well, first off, the merpeople are actually a real small part of the short story. She and Az has a couple of comedic scenes with Geralt, then the Witcher fights off a bunch of oddniks. Then at the end, she and Az walks into Aglabal's court on her human legs to profess her love for her dumbass boyfriend. And that's it. There's kind of a Lovecraftian, unknowable mystery to the merfolk, represented by an undersea staircase that descends to their kingdom into the blackened, watery abyss. It's a natural starting point to expand in a feature adaptation. And it's pretty cool to see how Sirens incorporates all sorts of international flavors of mythic sea peoples, from the Slavic Vodniks to the Gaelic Selkie. Once again, I am pro-mermaid boobage, but the more amphibious design of the merfolk better emphasize their non-human qualities, and by extension make the physical little sacrifice at the end all the more impactful. In the book, she and Az and Aglabal are more of a sardonic parody of the Little Mermaid that Sapkowski uses to lampshade how women are expected to sacrifice so much more in a relationship than men. The potion to give a mermaid legs is a painful 3-day ordeal, while the potion to turn human into merman is quick and painless. But it's she and Az who has to take the burden, while the Duke literally doesn't sacrifice anything. They're far more conventionally sympathetic in Sirens, though I do like that they're still a little dumb. But like dumb in a very teenagery way. Here, Aglaval isn't a ruling duke, but the prince heir under a king, which on one hand does take away a lot of his agency as a character, though it also allows this story about grand-scale politics to loop back down to very personal stakes. The thorny relationship between a father and their child, which is a quintessentially Witcher theme. King Usvelt is a dickhead, but there is a pathos to him as a widower who buried his passions long ago, running a kingdom that's hanging on by a frayed thread. Like Emperor Emir, his fatal flaw is that he treats his progeny as extensions of himself, rather than as individuals with their own passions and ideas of what it means to sacrifice. Aglabal largely broods for most of the movie, until at the very end, when he takes the witch's potion to transform into his lover's form. The queer subtext is so thick, it's impossible for even my dumb hetero ass to not pick it up. The meek, twinky young man looking uncomfortable in his skin, the parent who decries his relationship with Shianaz as unnatural, and of course mermaids in general have become a symbol for trans femme people the world over. And yeah, the usual suspects are already grousing about how Studio Mir and Netflix turned A Little Sacrifice woke. Which, first off, Shianaz in the original story is openly bisexual, and talks about messing around with her mermaid girlfriends back home. And The Eternal Flame, the story that comes before A Little Sacrifice in the book, centers around non-binary changeling characters, of which Geralt says are inherently of a better nature than the average human. Sapkowski is that woke lib, and LGBT characters have always been part of the Witcher series. Anyway, Aglaval turning into a merman ends up being the trademark postmodern Witcher twist to a fairy tale that up to that point had been played pretty, straight. It certainly makes the Little Sacrifice theme make more sense in regards to him and Shianaz. She goes through so much physical and emotional pain and loses a family member for her love, so it's only natural that Aglaval gives up something similar. The potion and transformation here are actually very painful, and the Witcher's line to Oosfelt,
"You had 2 sons, now you have none,"
is instantly a classic Geralt quote. Aglaval and Shianaz have made a choice to live their own truth, but there is a moral ambiguity surrounding it at the very end. By rejecting humanity and any influence on the crown, they've set the stage for the king to trigger a bigger war, one that will likely claim even more lives on both sides. It becomes then a question of price. What are you willing to sacrifice for your passions? That question sort of becomes inverted for Geralt, i.e., is he willing to sacrifice his own passionate desires for a sense of stability? To that end, A Little Sacrifice asks another question, one that is still debated in parts of the Witcher fandom, and centers around a character who doesn't even make an appearance in the short story. Why Yennefer? Why is Geralt continually drawn to someone so volatile, so reckless in her words and actions, so iced over by trauma and insecurity, that she is incapable of truly reciprocating the Witcher's love, leaving him frozen by his own longing? What if Geralt were to meet someone that, unlike Yennefer, is seemingly perfect for him in every way, who naturally radiates warmth, stability, and gentle emotional honesty, who pointedly doesn't fetishize his mutated body, who is more than willing to open up her deepest vulnerabilities to the Witcher, and likewise receive his in return, without any judgment? In walks Essie Davin, an acquaintance of Dandelion. No, not like that. For once, you actually believe him when he says,
"Yeah, she's like a sister to me."
She is a wellspring of kindness, intelligence, and eloquence. Geralt, on the other hand, doesn't appreciate others prying into his Witcher work, and reacts coldly to the troubadour's initial advance. He later, almost apologetically, makes his own pass. And let's get this out of the way. In the book, Sapkowski describes Essie as no older than 18, and Geralt is, at least 3 times her age. Nope, no, I am not doing age cap discourse. I'll just note that Geralt pursuing Essie, trying to capture some sort of youthful spontaneity, and thinking he can literally sweep her off her feet with a non-consensual kiss, is explicitly framed as incredibly stupid and misguided. The whole point is that Geralt underestimates Essie's worldliness and maturity, and that her curiosity into him is much deeper than the carnal allure provided by the Witchers. I do, however, appreciate Sirens aging up Essie to be closer to Jaskier's age, who I guess in this timeline is pushing 40? Don't think about it too much.
What is time, anyway?
It's a whole different dynamic from the book, with Essie as the Witcher universe equivalent of the high school classmate who stayed behind in her hometown and lived a contented life playing bar gigs on the weekends. For as much bullshit that slops out of Dandelion Jaskier's mouth, he drops nothing but absolute facts in A Little Sacrifice when he tells Geralt that he is the most normal person he knows, and that he uses his mutations as a cudgel to push away people who would otherwise see him as an ordinary human. Geralt is both pulled in and repulsed by the idea of a normal life, as represented by Essie. In the book, she's a hot, up-and-coming traveling bard, though I think the older, more mature, more settled Essie of Sirens makes that domesticity a little bit more tempting for Geralt. Still, in either version, Essie provides a committed love to anchor Geralt, to stand up for him when he's prejudiced against, and an opportunity for him to at last fully assimilate into society. And Dandelion would have the perfect ballad already pre-written for him. Yet, Geralt feels nothing for Essie, only pity that she is willing to give so much that he would be unable to give back in equal measure. In the book, the bardess is left with an unfulfilled desire for the Witcher, an illness that will plague her for the rest of her life. It parallels another story from the Sword of Destiny collection, A Shard of Ice, where Yennefer faces a similar dilemma, though with Geralt as the forlorn lover entrapped by her charms. The sorceress passed that icy dagger of desire to the Witcher, and now it pierces the heart of poor Little Eye. Geralt has difficulty articulating to himself why he can't return the Bardess's love, other than Essie isn't Yennefer. He wonders where the troubadour hides her dark side, but there isn't one. The gentle bardcore love just doesn't do it for him. He needs something simultaneously cold, yet electrified with passion. A love with friction. Essie struggles to uncover the Witcher's innermost thoughts, mostly because, well, she's 18, and makes presumptions about a grown-ass man's life, not from her own lived experience, but from ballads and poems. And don't get me wrong, music and verse can speak to an emotional truth, but that's not the same thing as actually living that truth, and understanding it at your core. In this case, the truth of a magically augmented person, seemingly stripped of their humanity, discovering a love that they feel undeserving of. A spark that is indescribable in words, something that Yennefer shares with Geralt, something that drives the Witcher time and time again to give their relationship another shot, even knowing heartache and self-sabotage awaits them. Something that Essie doesn't and will never truly understand. The irony is that the more moving version of Essie and Geralt's romance is not the love-conquering all fairy tale penned by the bard, but the reality that true love is a delicate balancing act between passion and compromise. Without compromise, individual passion can consume both lover and beloved. Without passion, there is nothing to make that required little sacrifice. Both conditions are unsustainable for Essie, for Geralt, for Yennefer. Yet just because that sort of love is fleeting doesn't mean it's devoid of meaningful beauty. It makes sense that the 30-something-year-old Essie in Sirens has enough wisdom on matters of the heart to say pretty much all of this to the Witcher at the end. But that's the biggest flaw of the movie for me. It's a lot of telling, but not showing. The Mermaid War plot kinda pushes Geralt and Essie's romance to the side, and you don't get enough moments of repose between them for the relationship to have any real impact. It's a bummer, because there is a lot of potential exploring their dynamic. However, the Bardess comes off as just another charming little fling with a bad accent that the Witcher passes through on his date with Destiny. The short story, on the other hand, crumples you up, folds you back out again, and then rips you into pieces. After days of suffering the awkward sexual angst between Essie and Geralt, Dandelion basically yells, "Why don't you just fuck already?" So they do. And what follows is one of the most evocatively written chapters in the whole Witcher saga. A final feast before they part, each down their own separate path. Ingredients procured by Dandelion from a local market, cooked by Geralt with the sign of Igni, with Essie providing campfire songs. The Witcher taking in the sweet smells, the soothing voices, the crackling warmth of the fire, for once actually living in a simple, blissful moment with little thought of the future, though still with Yennefer on his mind. The next morning, the bard composes a little sacrifice, parentheses, Dandelion's version, his wistful hope for the future of his two closest friends. But reality betrays him. The Witcher and the Bardess will never see each other again. In 4 years' time, at the age of no older than 22, Essie Little Eye Davin will die of smallpox. Dandelion will bury her body in the forest of Temeria, alongside her lute, in a vibrant blue pearl gifted by none other than Geralt of Rivia himself.
It just hit me.
Not gonna lie, going into Sirens of the Deep, I kinda wanted this sad ending. To hear Joey Beatty sing of eternal love, while on screen the true story wallops you in the gut. It gives me goosebumps just imagining it. Yet I'm also glad Sirens didn't go that route. The tragedy of Essie's death in A Little Sacrifice is that she was young and had a full life of freedom and boundless creative expression ahead of her, and you just wouldn't quite get the same pathos with an older, more fulfilled Bardess. Plus, the epilogue to Aglaval and Usfeldt's arc is already bittersweet enough as it is, that I don't blame the screenwriters for using a lighter touch. Besides, a faithful text-to-screen adaptation of A Little Sacrifice goes against the very ethos of the short story, which itself is revealed at the end to be an exploration of the nature of narrative license. It's meta as hell, particularly in retrospect. I mean, what are the Witcher games but a rejection of the real ending of the books that resurrect dead characters and give them the fairy tale ending the fans thought they deserved? And within those games are narrative paths in which the players themselves take up the role of bard, molding the story into what they deem satisfying and emotionally moving. Andrzej Sapkowski may chafe a bit at, well, video games entirely as a medium, but he's not too precious about his work, adopting a very John Carpenter attitude towards adaptation. He doesn't so much relinquish The Witcher as much as he, for a negotiable fee, lets other creatives use the materials of the story to build upon their own artistic take. To that end, I still think Sirens of the Deep finds the heart of A Little Sacrifice, that within the unrelenting, unfeeling cruelty of the continent are fleeting moments of joy and humanity, the strumming of a lute, the melodic timbre of a troubadour or a mermaid, a soft, caring caress, defiant declarations of love, all glimmering pearls one can hold on to in an uncertain future. And boy howdy, that's resonating a lot more in 2025.